I'm Mark Boris and this is Straight Talk. Neil Perry, about damn time, mate. Welcome to Straight Talk.
Good to be here. For people when they see me, because I've been associated with great restaurants, Roppel Bar and Grill and now Margaret, we've always strived to be the best we possibly can be. Sure, we're in the restaurant business, but the reality of what we do is create great memories. People say, oh, that's just a steak on a plate. Well, it's not really. It's like a conversation I had 4 years ago when the calf was born. It's the conversation I'm having on Monday when my guys are out fishing and catching King George whiting and flathead and garfish. And all these conversations are more important than tweezers and flowers and all the stuff that people nowadays put on food. Started my apprenticeship when I was 18 months old. Dad loved food and loved cooking. He actually created who I am today without me even realising.
Neil Perry, about damn time, mate. Welcome to Straight Talk.
Good to be here.
Mate, you've been so busy, though. I mean, it's pretty much impossible to have sort of pried you away from what you love and do. And you most recently opened up your latest venture, which we'll talk about a bit later, Songbird, but we'll talk about it a little bit down the track. Everyone's always talking about what you are currently doing. I want to go back to Neil Perry, right back. You're a 67-year-old guy. You're a little bit younger than me, not much, mate. And Neil Perry obviously started somewhere,
yes,
like at some stage, right? And at some stage in his life, he decided he wanted to be in the, food business.
Yeah.
Or maybe you were a lawyer. I don't know. What's the deal? Who were you when you were in your 15, 16, that period?
Yeah, well, I what I did was I went to Newington College and I did year 10. And then the school sergeant essentially said to me with 1 week to go, you've got to go and get your hair cut. And I've always been attached to hair, as you can see. It's having a ponytail still at 67. So I just went, no, there's just no way. So I jumped on the train, went back to Drummoyne where we lived, and just said to Mum and Dad, I'm leaving Newington and I'm going to Drummoyne Boys High. So that kind of started 2 years of pretty wild school end of school for me, because Newington was so strict and there were so many rules, and then all of a sudden you're in year, essentially 11 and 12 these days, with no teachers caring whether you're there or not, and or what you do. So I just basically played football the whole time and
football as in rugby league, right?
I played union and played league as well. So we did a little bit of district and state representation and things like that. So that was a bit of fun. And then I decided I was going to do arts. Union decided, no, I'll take a gap year. I started hairdressing, worked for Lloyd Lomas actually.
Well, Lloyd Lomas in Double Bay.
Yeah, I think
he was in Double Bay. Then,
no,
wasn't
he wasn't. He was in the city then. He was in just off Martin Place.
I want to start with you because people got to get a bit of an understanding. So we're talking about early 70s.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about the early 70s, and like everybody needs to understand this. At that period, long hair for men was the go. And because I remember my hair was pretty long, but our school was similar, but it wasn't Newington, but it was a little Catholic school in Lakemba.
Yeah.
And if you had long hair past your collar, long hair then by the way is past your collar.
Yeah, exactly.
You were in big trouble. And it was very strict rules. Men don't have long hair. Yeah. And we were going through the age of Aquarius, etc. There was a lot of that sort of thing going on. It was the Beatles were a big deal.
Yeah, Vietnam War just
Vietnam
ended,
War, correct. So people don't to have long hair wasn't just to have long hair.
Yeah.
I mean, you were being a bit modest then. It was actually quite rebellious. You were considered rebellious if you didn't get your hair cut.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and you were part of that. I mean, it was the early to mid 70s, so you were part of that late 60s, kind of hippie swing thing, and anti-war and all that sort of stuff. So, and I actually remember the first time I went to Singapore. I was going to stop off, but I couldn't because it was against the law.
No,
for
past your collar.
Yeah, for the whole city.
Yeah.
So I had to stay on the plane and continue on to London, whereas I would have loved to have dropped into Singapore. But
at
I was 18.
What age were you then when you started?
I was 18.
18.
Yeah. So that was my first overseas trip. Went to Europe. I just started waiting in a restaurant to essentially make some money to go on that trip. Then I worked in a bar in Greece, came home and...
that was pretty adventurous, mate, for those days.
Yeah, it was. My sister was over there and I went over and I was working in a club and it was pretty amazing actually because I was up in Mclachlan, which is like the red light district sort of, I guess you'd call it, or the entertainment district. And
so all the restaurants and cafes.
Where the restaurants, bars and so forth. And the Acropolis is right there. And Sigmund Square or whatever it's called. It's down the bottom, but you'd leave the bar at 3 a.m, go down and have a coffee and, it was a pretty interesting lifestyle actually. So straight away I got bitten by the whole, I suppose, the flexibility in hospitality. So when I got back, I got a job at the Australia Club and I was, just gone past 18. Then I was heading towards 19. And I saw an ad in the paper for an assistant manager's job for sales at McMahon's Point. And I went for the job and got it, which was fantastic. And
sales in what?
Sales at McMahon's Point. So
sales the restaurant.
Yeah, sales the restaurant. So the really good thing there was Ross Hartman was there. He was a really good restaurateur. And so I was there for 3 years and he started to teach me a lot about being a restaurateur, and I was hiring people in the end and doing the wages and responsible for the food percentages and doing the booze ordering and doing the wine tastings and, working with the chef on getting fresh fish. And because I probably knew more about fresh fish than he did. He was an Irish guy and I had grown up with my father fishing all the time. So, our holidays were Yamba in winter and Brill Lakes in summer fishing. He loved it. And we lived on Georges River, so he was fishing all weekends. And so my whole life I'd just eaten fish that we caught unless we were eating in a restaurant. So that was a really amazing grounding for me. And then I did a couple of other things, but in 1982 I just decided that I wanted to cook. And it was a bit serendipitous. I was working at where Catalina is now, but it was sales. Yeah, it was sales at Rose Bay. And I was
that's not where they used to have like a ferry thing.
Yeah, there was there was a ferry exactly where it was, but it essentially was exactly the same as it is now. But they kind of flipped the restaurant. From memory, the kitchen was where it is, but you used to enter from the back end.
Yeah, I sort of remember going there.
Yeah, so it was always busy and just a crazy act of fate. So the chef actually used to love skydiving, and he missed a landing, put his back out, and it was Sunday lunch, and he was actually out for 2 weeks. So I used to expedite the pass on the other side when it was really busy anyway, but I actually jumped in and ran the dockets from the kitchen side and grilled some fish. It was pretty simple stuff and wasn't rocket science. And I just actually loved it. I just really, really loved it and realised, I'd been cooking crazy dinner parties my whole life, and Dad had taught me so much about food that I didn't realise it at the time. But when I wrote my first cookbook, I thought long and hard about why I ended up in the position that I ended up in and why produce was so important to me. It was really all about him. He was a gardener, he was a fisherman, he was a butcher. I mean, we had the best of everything. We ate with the seasons. We grew our own food. Eggs came from chickens we had in the aviary. It was really an incredible upbringing for somebody who wanted to be a chef. So I then spent 82. So we're talking about fairly long time ago, but I worked for anywhere between 6 weeks and 3 weeks, 3 months with a whole lot of great chefs. Damien Pignolet had Claude's at the time. He introduced me to Stephanie Alexander. I moved to Melbourne for 3 months, came and worked for Gabe Bilson at Brow Waters when Tony came to open Kinsella's, and she had Brower for the first time all by herself, and then before Yanni had started, and then I went to work for Jenny Ferguson at You and Me, met Stefano Manfredi there, which was fantastic. That sort of kicked off a lifelong friendship. And then I worked at Tony Pappas when we first opened the Bayswater Brasserie, which was insane. 350 covers turned up the first night. No one really knew what they were doing. I think Tony and I were the only ones in the kitchen, and a couple of others that knew what cooking was, and I'd only been cooking for like 9 months or whatever. And then an old girlfriend of mine was working with Judy McMahon at Simpson's in the city, which is sort of off, I think it was off Ash Lane actually, sort of where Justin is now.
Yeah.
And she said that they'd bought Barrenjoey House and they were looking for a chef, and I was crazy enough to think that I might be able to do this, which was ridiculous of me because I'd only been cooking for about 9 months. And so I went and I sat on the lawn with Mcmahon and we drank a bottle of wine together, and, I rode up on my bike. I'm not sure I should have ridden home. Beautiful day in Palm Beach. So they had an apartment that was looking down over the water. And I think he must have just looked at all the places that I'd worked, which were great places. Didn't think about how long I'd been there, and the fact that I'd only been cooking for less than a year. And so he gave me the job as head chef. I started in November 82. Leo Schofield came up in 83 and wrote up
as the food critic.
As the food critic,
the food critic,
and mate,
probably still is.
It moved mountains when he did a write up. And so he came to Palm Beach. He stayed at Barrenjoey, and he went to Pete Doyle's Reflections, which was just down the road. And he ate at Barrenjoey House, and he gave me 17 out of 22 hats. Kids the Star was the headline, and I just never looked back from there.
Well, when you just sort of covered a number of years,
yeah,
but you also covered a number, like just about every big name in the, let's call it the restaurant
of the
business
time,
for the moment. At the time, and some of those people are sort of fairly iconic.
Yeah.
At least in my mind, because I remember, I don't know most of them, but I definitely know most of their restaurants, and they were all very famous. And then you picked Leo Schofield, who, as far as I'm concerned, is one of Australia's greatest athletes. Like, in other words, what about knowledge about what is beautiful, whether it's food or architecture, or music, etc. And he's still alive too,
and he is.
He's just down the road in Prospect.
We're hoping that he'll get to the Good Food Guide, which is next week, for the 40th anniversary. And so I was in the first guide with Barrenjoey House, and still going. I think I'm the only one.
So, but how is it that Neil Perry, a kid from Newington, year 10, left school because his hair was too long and didn't want to be told what to do, kid from Drummoyne. Drummoyne then wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
Drummoyne's a fairly fancy joint now. Drummoyne then was a inner west suburb.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't, wasn't where it is now, put it that way. How do you think you got to meet all these people? Was it your naivety and therefore application for anything?
No, look, it was really through food, and I guess I knew all of these guys because when I was at sales, I was earning really good money. I was running the restaurant. It was 8 francs to the dollar back then, with no tax on imported booze. So we were drinking, like the stuff that we drink now, like Romney Conti, and Dom and Lafitte, and we were drinking, amazing Sauternes, Ichem, and so forth, because they were just as cheap as Australian wines back in those days. And now you can't afford to buy a bottle. I mean, a bottle of Burgundy is just insane now. So I knew a lot about wine. I learned a lot about wine. And I knew these guys. I used to eat at.
How do you get to meet them?
Well, because you're drinking well and you're eating well and you're in their restaurant and you're in the business, and they come up and talk to you, and so you start chatting, and so
how
we
do you
became
put yourself
friends.
in the company, mate? Because it's like someone else might be sitting there. Look, I've been trying to get in so and so's company, or I've been trying to get in Neil Perry's company for a long time, but I can't. He won't give me a look in because you're busy, whatever.
Yeah.
Or was it just a different time?
I think it was very much a different time. So I was so lucky. Everything was so concentrated. When you talk about Leo before, he gave you a review. It had filled the restaurant for a year. Now you get a review in one of the major papers, and really the phone might ring for a week. Because the information's so disparate now about how people gather their news or not news. I mean, just as many people are just looking at Instagram. All the kids that work for me, all the young ones, I'll say, we got a great review in the Good Food Guide. They probably don't even know what that means.
Well, they don't buy the paper.
No, they don't even know what the paper is. And so the reality of it is, back in those days, I wouldn't like to be starting now trying to make a name for myself. There were half a dozen really good restaurants in Sydney, and there was a very small pool of people that used to eat at them, and you knew the chefs. So that's what it was like. And so growing up through the 80s and 90s, and working with other iconic chefs like Tetsuya and myself and Stefano Manfredi and Chrissy Manfield and David Thompson and Dietmar Sawyer, we were kind of like the forefront of everything that's come after, and then, been joined by guys like, Matt Moran and so forth. Like, Matt's a decade younger than me. But, those kind of guys have done well now. Peter Gilmore, of course, sort of kind of legendary status in Key Restaurant and so forth. But I think for me, starting at that time was definitely an advantage. I wouldn't be able to do what I did then, now, for sure.
And it's funny, Neil Perry is a brand in itself. which you've been clever enough to leverage in all sorts of ways. It seems to me at some stage in your life, outside of cooking, and I don't mean that in a deferential sense, like, I mean, chef or cooking, I mean, you're brilliant at it. But outside of that, it seems to me that you spent some a level of energy building the Neil Perry brand, or either consciously or unconsciously, or did it just emerge? Neil Perry became a brand?
I mean, I think, the reality of a brand is it's sort of a promise, right? So people talk about an image or whatever it might be, or the graphic of a brand. It's really the emotion that it actually brings up when you see that. And I think for people, when they see me, because I've been associated with great restaurants, Rockpool, Blue Water Grill originally, and Rockpool Bar and Grill, and now Margaret, we've always strived to be the best we possibly can be every day. I've always had a great philosophy to work with the guys. Right from the beginning, I talked to them about the fact that, sure, we're in the restaurant business, but the reality of what we do is create great memories. So we're in the memory business. So if we don't, we can create a bad memory, a lukewarm one, or a great memory. So, I talk to them about, hospitality, generosity, the care philosophy, which is how we run our business. It's very simple. But all of that is really about creating this amazing memory so that people talk about the restaurant, the strength of the brand. Like, editorial and word of mouth is much stronger than any kind of advertising you can ever do. And we're in a business that people like to talk about it. It's it's very much part of the community, dining, eating, socializing. We're very lucky. That's part of the human condition, right? So we're very heavily involved in that, and it's why I suppose chefs and restaurateurs have been put on this pedestal, because people enjoy and love to be entertained. We're in the entertainment business, but they love to have these great memories that they can think about. I mean, if you on any one day, when we come to work, we're kind of very responsible for things. Like, we've got an 80th birthday, and you don't want Auntie Jan's 80th birthday be completely stuffed up for the entire family, right? We've got a wedding celebration. We've got an anniversary. We've got people have come and done wakes at the restaurant. Father's Day, Mother's Day,
Melbourne Cup Day.
Like, you've got all of these celebrations that are very important to people, and if you stuff it up, I mean, they've got a bad memory of someone's birthday or anniversary or whatever it might be. So there's an amazing responsibility there, and you've really got to make sure that every day you're on form. So because I really early on just decided I wanted to be the best at what I was doing, and I wanted to try and bring really good people through with me, that people have kind of resonated with that. And my style is very different to a lot of other, I wouldn't call what I do now fine dining. It's just, great eating. But through the Rockpool days, yes, I was pushing the envelope and whatever. But for me, now it's really just about doing the best that we possibly can, talking to our fishermen, talking to our beef growers, making sure that the best produce comes in to the restaurant, making sure that our egos get right out of the way and that people taste the nature in the produce that we've actually, spent years sourcing, building relationships. People will say, oh, that's just a steak on a plate. Well, it's not really. It's like a conversation I had 4 years ago when, the calf was born. It's the conversation I'm having on Monday when my guys are out fishing and catching King George whiting and flathead and garfish and, whether it be coral trout or amazing bass groper or jewfish out of the west. All these conversations are more important than, tweezers and flowers and all the stuff that people nowadays put on food.
That's very interesting.
And they don't think about where did the food come from. They just think about how pretty it looks, and that's not the right.
Is that your evolution? Is that an evolution of Neil Perry today, or were you always like that?
I've always been like that, even since Baron Joey days. I mean, I was just lucky. Some guys came up to the back door, a week after we'd opened, and said, "We go out fishing. I've got a 15-kilo jewfish. I've got school prawns. I've got
You're talking about DH jewfish or
Jew? It's jewfish, which now we call mulloway.
Yeah, mulloway.
And so
great fish, I love it.
Oh, beautiful fish, and we get those big fish coming into the Hawkesbury out from sea. 15 kilos, 20 kilos. massive jewfish steak. I mean, they when the harbour prawn season was on, we'd be getting the schoolies out of Hawkesbury. There was just an amazing amount of fish, and there used to be quite a good fish shop right next to us at Barrenjoey, and then we'd feed off those guys coming and bringing stuff in from there, and then I'd drive to the fish market twice a week. So seafood was really important to us then, and that's when I started putting our suppliers, if a fish was delivered by a fisherman, his name went on the menu. And so I pursued that ever since. And so it was the same at the Blue Water Grill. On the back of the menu, we'd write the suppliers. At the front page at Rockpool, we'd write the suppliers. Bar and Grill, we named them all. At Margaret, I actually, because the relationships have been going for so long, 20 years plus, we actually call most of our suppliers by their first name. So it's Pav and Heidi's Big Eye Tuna, it's Bruce's King George Whiting, because we just have this incredible relationship with these guys that make us. They make us. We don't make them, and that's a really important thing to focus on. And for me, that started with my father, because we were digging things out of the garden, picking things out of the garden in season. We were picking eggs out of the bums, off the chickens as they were trying to, hatch them, or running around the yard. We were, he was killing the odd one, and we were eating it, and we were eating fresh fish that he'd catch, and he'd bring amazing meat home, and we'd have large format cuts of meat cooked on the barbecue and sliced up, and all this stuff. And I had lots of great Chinese friends at that stage that we'd get invited to their houses and eat amazing food, or we'd get invited to their wedding, or their Chinese New Year celebration. And so I didn't even realize it, but I was kind of getting a snapshot of food that Australians weren't really getting at that time. My father ran a really large abattoir and meat processing space, and so the boners and the butchers were like Italians, Hungarians, Greeks. So when I'd go and help them school holidays and go and push meat and do things, and when I got older, I was sort of delivering meat in school holidays, but they'd sit down and breakfast would be sandwich with salami and pickled eggplant. I was eating all this stuff and kind of just thinking that was normal. But as I got older, I kind of realized that wasn't
definitely not normal.
No, definitely not normal. Like, Dad was a butcher, so Sunday breakfast would be crumbed lamb's brains on toast, or veal kidneys or lamb's kidneys, or lamb's fry and bacon and tomato and tripe, and so we had everything, and so. Yeah, it wasn't until kids would come over and have a sleepover, and we'd be, doing some lamb's fry and bacon. They'd go, "Oh, what's this?
What the hell?
Yeah, what's this?" But it was a really rich food background, and Dad loved food and loved cooking, so he'd always say, "Taste this, taste this. What do you remember? What are you thinking about?" So he actually created who I am today without me even realizing. I got and started my apprenticeship when I was, 18 months old, or the first time I started having solids, because Dad was cooking up fresh vegetables for me and eating fresh fish, and so wherever I started from was a really beautiful place of fresh seasonal ingredients, and I don't think people were really experiencing that normally. Maybe if they lived in the country, but certainly not in the city.
Is your dad still alive?
No, he passed away when Josephine was born 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Sadly, yeah.
30 years ago. Well, he'd be very proud of where you are. Actually, funny you should say that, because when you were talking to me, I was just trying to remember where I first went to one of your restaurants, and I remember it was down at the Rocks, and it was what was the name of the
Rockpool?
It was original Rockpool.
Yeah.
And I went there with two old mates of mine, and you would probably remember Zara Elazov, who's now passed away, and Bill Shipton, who's recently passed away.
Yeah. Well, we're losing everyone.
Yeah, and they were in their 80s, and I'd never been exposed to this type of food in terms of quality, price for me at the time, but just like complexity for me. What looked like a complexity for me in terms of sauces and things like that. And then I remember seeing you on TV, and I don't remember what show you were doing, but I saw you on TV sort of cooking and demonstrating cooking and stuff like that. But one of the things I learned, and I've learned lots of things from going to your restaurants. Of course, I went to the Rockpool restaurant in the city, which is very close to my office. And I spent in fact, at one stage there, I was having my dinner or lunch there at least 3-4 times a week.
Yeah.
That was where I went and got a decent meal.
Yeah.
And I got to learn a lot of things about what was on your menu. So my first introduction to the place called Cape Grim in Australia, which is at the bottom of Tasmania, which is where you were getting your steaks from, or your beef from.
Grass-fed beef.
Grass-fed. And then I started learning about grass-fed as well. It wasn't a thing for me. But I normally would do this. I went and researched Cape Grim, and I found out that the water that falls from the sky in Cape Grim is the cleanest water in the world. Measured by the CSIRO.
And they actually bottle water there.
Correct.
I don't know if you've ever had the Cape
I have,
Grim
and
rainwater.
the people who bottle the water come and saw me
and
asked me to invest in the business.
Yeah.
Which, I didn't. The only reason I didn't invest in them because at that stage they had the water was in plastic bottles.
Yeah.
They actually went to glass bottles, and they ended up being on one of the airlines. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think we flew them for a little while.
For Qantas, was it? Yeah. And I don't know whatever happened to them, but I was quite impressed the fact that I thought, and I actually worked out when I went down and saw it. I saw how the water was collected from the rain, etc., and then it was filtered, etc., through light filtration. But then I thought to myself, well, if the cows are eating the grass that this water is watering, they've got to be fantastic. I then started buying Cape Grim. I know that Harris Farms sells Cape Grim, and
they do now. Yeah,
they do now.
Yeah,
you can get Cape Grim.
Yeah, I think
beef.
There's a few butchers around now, and there's more and more. They're a big producer now because they've bought a few farms into the co-op.
Yeah, it's like a co-op. Where
and to be Cape Grim, they need to be 36 months, a fully mature cow, older, better flavour profile. So one of the reasons why I did that. So to get back to the reason why I ended up with a restaurant called Rockpool and then one called Rockpool Bar and Grill, John Alexander and James Packer, when they decided to redo the casino up just after James and Kerry had bought it down in Melbourne, John had, and John's one.
JA was with the.
Well, JA was really one of the most instrumental. You talk about Leo. JA started the Good Food Guide and started Leo.
He was at
Fairfax, and then when he went and ran ACP magazines, he started the restaurant awards and restaurant of the year for gourmet. So that became massive under his watch. So twice he's really created the two definitive, restaurant guides in Australia.
Another aesthetically perfection-seeking person in everything, art, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And so they got me down there, and there were a number of restaurants that they showed me, and then John, a number of spaces, I should say, because there were spaces being converted. There were existing restaurants. And we went to Cicconi's, which was a beautiful restaurant. We sat there, had dinner. I remember John ordered a bottle of Tignanello, which is one of my favorite Italian reds. So we drank that. I just loved the space. I got in the elevator with him, pressed the buttons going up, and I said, mate, if you give me that space, I'll come down tomorrow. And he said to me, well, that's not really one of the spaces, because they were very happy. It was Lloyd's favourite restaurant, which is another thing that
we're talking about Lloyd Williams.
Lloyd Williams, and Lloyd was a great, James' mentor. And
Kerry's best mate.
So anyway, I got a call 3 days later, said it's yours if you want it. So that started the whole idea. And then as we got closer, so it's a big space, right? So Rockpool's a 100-seat restaurant and fine dining, and that's pushing the envelope for size for fine dining. And this is like a 240-seat restaurant. And so he said to me, look, we're really investing in the name Rockpool because we were in the top 50 restaurants in the world at that stage. We'd finished second, 4th and 8th and 16th in the first 3 years just before we opened in Melbourne. He said, you can do anything you like with it, but it's got to have the name Rockpool because that's the brand we're investing in, right? So straight away, my thought went to, I've always wanted to open a steakhouse because my dad was a butcher. Meat's always been incredibly important to me. And the only reason Rockpool ended up a seafood restaurant is when I opened it at 89, I couldn't get the quality of beef consistently I wanted to. By the time, fast forward to 2005, 2006, and there's David Blackmore, there's Cape Grim, and I tasted older beef in Europe, old dairy cows. So I came back with that in mind when I found Cape Grim. So Rockpool Bar and Grill was born, steak restaurant. I've always loved great seafood, so I brought my fish suppliers down with me. So I think I created one of the great modern steakhouses in the world because not only did it have the best beef, dry aged and butchered on the premises, but I also had amazing fish coming in, dry filleted, straight on the grill. And it became became a Melbourne institution within 3 months of opening. It was quite.
I didn't realise that opened before the Sydney one.
Yeah, then the Sydney one opened a bit later.
Okay. I didn't realise it, and that was all part of the casino. of the Melbourne Casino.
Yeah. And then we ended up with Spice Temple down there and Rosetta.
And Rosetta, which unfortunately recently closed.
Yeah,
Rosetta.
which is a shame. Such a beautiful restaurant. I did that with John Alexander. I mean, they spent $8 million on it back in 2011. So I don't think you could get that much marble today. It was insane.
No way. So you opened up Rockpool here in Sydney then, and I always wanted to know how you went about, because obviously you don't cook every steak and every bit of fish.
No.
How you went about setting the menu. How do you go about setting a menu? Do you sit down? Is it a collaborative thing with your staff?
When I start a restaurant, I always write the menu and keep that into pretty tight control. I will do some collaboration after some period of time when I see the guys and see how they cook and that they've come into thinking about food the way that I do, because it's about craft of cooking. It's about really great seasoning, and it's about really looking after the produce and cooking it beautifully. And so the whole restaurant business is a very collaborative business. It's not about one person. It's about the collective, and you're really only as strong as if the kitchen hands fall over and the wet area goes to the shit, then, the whole restaurant's in the shit. It's basically very simple. If you've got a great team and the whole team's pulling together, you can create this great memory for people. So for me, especially having come from front of house for 7 years into the back of house, was always trying to be one team as opposed to us and them. It was very much a front of house and back of house when I first started in the 80s, and I always tried to change that. So for me, it was getting the best chefs around me, communicating them how I felt about food, teaching them about taste, seasoning, simplicity, teaching them about sourcing, produce, relationships, about caring about each other. The whole staff, my whole caring philosophy, the core of it really is about caring about each other. So for us, it's and for my business, what I do, and I did it at Rockpool, we now do it at Margaret, which we call a Margaret family, because my wife Sam and I own the business, and we don't really have any other shareholders, which is awesome. We really want to make the people who work for us better people. I mean, I'm definitely trying to make you a better cook. I'm definitely going to make you a better sommelier. I'm trying to make you a better manager, a waiter, whatever you're doing. But I'd really like to make you a better person as well. I'd like you to be much more aware about the environment, community, politically activated, because the younger generation are the ones that hopefully our generation suck the marrow out of the world. So I'm hoping that enough of these young people get invigorated that they can try and change it and take it back. So and I try to make them feel like they've got to look after each other and care for each other, and whether that's in a work sense or a personal sense, whether that's are you okay, or can I help you, or so they're the sort of things that I think create a really well-rounded organization. And for me, the one thing I'm most proud of, probably in the span of my career, is it's a long one, but I've had a lot of people that have stayed with me for a very, very long period of time, and I think that comes down to the culture that we create.
Well, how would you describe yourself? I mean, we're inundated. Describe yourself in the kitchen, that is, or describe yourself in the business, but particularly in the kitchen, because we see, we know what Gordon Ramsay's like. But that's his TV persona too.
No, that's his shtick, right?
Yeah, that's his
He's
thing.
a really nice guy.
But how would you? Correct. So how would you describe yourself in the kitchen environment?
I think
Do you get angry?
No, not at all. I think my whole approach is kind of building people's confidence rather than knocking them down. I'm always talking to my guys about, in the heat of service, because it's a stressful, full-on environment. If you just take your stress and put it onto somebody else, you're not diffusing the bomb, right? It's actually creating bigger explosion. So you really like to start yelling at people in the middle of service just creates bottlenecks. But to sit down with people after and say, that really wasn't good enough. We're better than that. That wasn't cooked properly, or the timing wasn't right, or come on guys, the order was completely wrong. If you walk up to a waiter in the middle of service and start berating him, like he's got 10 tables to look after, you're not going to be in the right mental sort of space. So my philosophy is always about talking about things at the right time. It's much more meaningful. Really walking towards the tension. So if you see that there's a problem, you get to it quickly and have a conversation before it becomes, boils over into a bigger issue. And also, I just always think that if I can only really affect myself and my mood. So when I'm doing these openings, or I'm in the restaurant, it's really, what can I do? Well, I can control myself. I can take a couple of deep breaths. I can go and help that person get under control. I can diffuse this situation, but I can't do anything about all the stuff that's happening around me. So I have to stay calm. If I get caught up in all the schmozzle that's happening around, then, it doesn't do anything but sort of derail where I'm at. So my kind of philosophy is more, I suppose, Zen. I don't really find it a positive thing to be berating people or bringing people down or belittling people like some chefs do. But, sometimes that culture's learned. Chefs will live through that, and they think that that's the way to behave.
That all chefs act.
Yeah, and it's not really. I mean, I came from the front of house, so I'm more, kind of working out sort of how's the customer feeling, how do I look after the customer, how do I get my team to come with me, how do I get the best out of the chef. So even though most people would say I'm a chef, I always think of myself as a restaurateur first and foremost, and I'm lucky that I can cook and I have a really great passion for food, because that stops any chef or kitchen, from trying to stand over me, or because I'm able to run all of it. So for me, I guess I'm in a really unique position that I kind of learnt front of house, and I learnt how to be a restaurateur. I've got a really, a really strong philosophy on how I get people to come with me and grow them and grow with them. And then I've got a really great background in food, and essentially with the restaurant and menus, I only cook what I like. So I don't think, what would a critic like, or what would these guys like to eat? I actually cook the food that I really love, and I've been lucky enough that people love eating it. Because like people look at my large menu and go, "What's your favorite dish?" I go, "Well, everyone's my favorite dish. They wouldn't be on the menu." I don't put things on a menu that I don't love to eat. And when I eat at my restaurants, I eat all over the menu all the time, because all of those things, excite me. They're all beautiful produce and taste great and seasoned well.
You know what? Now that I've been spending a bit more time with you and just outside of restaurants, one of the things that, by the way, I should always notice, I always notice that you're always on the floor, wherever you are. You're always to be seen. I can see you all the time. I've seen you.
I'm at the restaurants.
You are always there.
Yeah.
You're not sort of standoffish or sitting up the top somewhere, watching the cash register or whatever. You're always there. But one of my observations about Neil Perry, apart from many thousands of observations about you, is that I would say you're a nutrition researcher. In other words, how do I make nutrition tasty?
Yeah.
Researching it, like hit all the things on your tongue, all the taste sensors on your tongue. But probably in addition to that, I see you as a public educator, because, I was just thinking to myself, what you do is you bring to the public through, things you publish, through television or through radio or through, magazines or wherever you want to write over a long period of time. You are educating, whether it's purposefully or not, I don't know, but you are educating us on grass-fed meat, best places to source it from, what a great fish is, what a King George whiting from Adelaide or wherever, I can't remember what they're called, what particular Coffin Bay oysters like compared to, other types of oysters. You've been educating us about food and the sources of food, particularly here in Australia. Yeah. Do you see yourself as having an obligation to be a public educator? Not in an official sense.
Yeah, but I it's something I really enjoy doing, but I very much saw myself as that. I mean, had the Good Weekend and Good Food column for, best part of 20 years. And I think I've written 12 books or whatever it might be. Pretty much every single book starts out with, the philosophy of good cooking is good shopping. So, that I've always talked about the quality of ingredients and completely understand financial pressures. But the reality of it is you're better to eat less of something, but better quality than a lot of something that's not great. So.
Well, can I stop there? Why is you mean from a taste point of view or from a nutritional point of view?
Well, but from both actually, and I think one of the things that we've also worked hard from a educational standpoint is things like waste. It's sort of like. A third of everything that's grown basically gets either ploughed back into the ground or buried in landfill, and people fill their fridges up with food that they don't eat or need. And so, diligent shopping and knowing what you want and investing in high quality means that you are utilizing everything that you have and you're not wasting, and you don't really end up spending much more money. But you're better off to eat 400 grams or 250 grams of really good meat every week than you are to a kilo of rubbish, and then have a couple of nice pieces of fish and eat vegetables. And people always say to me, "Oh, you're a really great chef, but how do you stay in shape, and do you work out?" And I said, "Well, I don't really, but I do about 20,000 steps a day between the restaurants and the kitchens and whatever. But I eat really well. I drink really well as well. I drink great wine, but I eat really well. I eat a lot of vegetables, I eat a lot of seafood. I'll probably eat just vegetarian style food 3-4 nights a week."
As opposed in that there's no protein in
no protein, yeah. And then I'll eat fish and I'll eat meat once a week maybe, but it'll be a beautiful steak. And
will you cook it yourself?
Yeah, I'll cook it myself a lot of the time, and I'll eat at the restaurants. And I have family meal at least 3 or 4 nights a week. So the great thing about that is family meals at 5. Now I get to choose between Songbird or Margaret, depending on what I feel like. But
what does a family meal mean?
Family meal is when the entire restaurant sits down, front house and kitchen, and even if there's people still in the restaurant dining, we just tell them we're having family meal, and that's our break. I feed them
staff,
yeah, and then they get up and they work the night. That's their break and their meal, and we get bread out of Baker Blue, and family meals planned. We don't. It's not leftovers. It's a planned meal. We buy produce in and we cook it. But the good thing about that is that I eat that at 5 o'clock, and I really don't eat again. I mean, I'm tasting things and stuff, but I think a really good plan for healthy eating. And when I eat out, I eat at 6 and 7 and 8:30 and whatever. But if you're eating early and you're active, because I'm still working, and you're essentially fasting for a good period of time, I think that sort of is a really good healthy lifestyle. And so I've been able to maintain, working 2 lifetimes in one, and stayed, healthy and feeling good and active. I mean, I don't have much disc on L5 and nothing much on C6, but apart from that, I've been really lucky. I'm really healthy. I feel like active. I feel young. I always say to people, they say, "Oh, how do you, keep looking the same?" And well, I'm like a vampire. I live off the inspiration and energy of all these amazing young people who work for me, and I just think I'm the same age as they are. I never kind of think, "Oh, you're in your 60s." I just look at them and I think, well, I'm just one of the pack. So
it's interesting when you say that. I saw you about I don't know. I think whenever Songbird was about to open.
Yes,
before Father's Day.
Oh yeah, right, yeah.
And I think I saw you on maybe on the Friday, the Saturday, and you were opening for Father's Day dinner or lunch. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
and you look completely fucked.
Oh mate, that was the worst time of my life.
I want to talk to you about that. And you look like you look like you just come off a rejuvenation program today compared to then.
Yeah, too.
Yeah. So I guess everybody thinks the restaurant business industry, and particularly what you're doing, is glamorous and it's fancy, and you've got great spaces and the food's all there and it all just sort of happens. I walk in, I eat the food, and beautiful wines. But it's just behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Maybe we can use Songbird as a proxy as to where it can be really fucking hard.
Yeah.
What is it like to get yourself ready for an opening day? Let's just take me through it. Now, you're and my good friends, the Mclachlan and the Palaces and all those people of the world, we love them.
Oh, we love them.
Dove, don't worry, we're not gonna pull you apart. Mate.
Charles and Patrick and Dan have been fabulous. Like, they're great landlords, and we did really awesome stuff together with Margaret and next door and the bakery. It was really awesome. A lot of people would say, wow, the hardest opening must have been Margaret, because the night you're about to open, all the produce is there, everything's happening. We go into lockdown for 4 months, the second lockdown.
Right.
The very night we were supposed to open, I had to cancel 16,000 bookings.
Whoa.
So like we
16,000.
Yeah, we knew. 2 weeks in, we knew it was going to. I thought it'd go on till 2021. I didn't think we would come out as quickly, but obviously, Gladys was amazing driving, and then Dominic after that, the whole program with vaccination and so forth, and we were really leading the country. But But, what happened then was incredible because we basically went into this period of neutral, and we were doing anything. 2 weeks in, I was like, I had a dark week, and then I thought, hang on, you just got to get up and get going. This is like all your staff are relying on you. So we got hold of everybody. We got them back in. Providore came to Sydney, so we joined that. We started selling burgers and all sorts of sandwiches and stuff at lunchtime because there were lots of people down walking and so forth. So we'd do 300 burgers in an hour and a half every day of the week. But what that did, like for 4 months, we all worked together. It was an amazing team, and we did a full week of training before October 13 when we opened again. So that actually ended up being the best restaurant opening that we've ever done because we all just knew each other so well.
Because your starting place is pretty crap.
Because we'd worked together for 4 months, essentially. It wasn't a restaurant, but we were there. We knew each other. We were cooking stuff in the kitchen. It was awesome. And then what happened with Songbird and Bobby's is essentially the base build ran late, and I had to pick a date, and I sort of put we're going to open the weekend before Father's Day. We're going to do 2 weeks worth of events. I've done this about 20 times in my life, but I've never missed it by so far. And so coming in to where the 2 weeks of events, so that's all about cash flow. People are paying me to do events. We can do events with our eyes closed. I mean, I can go into 1,000 people in, Martin Place with a set up kitchen there and take some of my team. And, we've done it so many times. All the catering I did at the MCA, volume doesn't worry me. So I knew we could do that. We get cash flow. And we're learning about the space and we're working together. We did the same thing when we opened Margaret. It was fantastic. Great way to
When you say learning about the space, you mean the rhythm of how the building works?
Yeah, the rhythm of how the building works, and you're working within it and you're working with customers, but you've got a set menu and everything's kind of controllable.
Yeah.
Because it's
sort of like an
narrow.
experiment.
It's really narrow. And you get after that 2 weeks, you're in really good shape, and then you put 2 or 3 more days training into it, and then you open and you're in a good space. And everything's done, you're ready and you're finished. Well, this was just an absolute nightmare because I'm running into that 2 weeks. We realised that we're not going to be able to get OC. The base builders are running late.
That's occupation certificate?
Yeah, occupation certificate. Base builders are running really late. They were supposed to finish in March, then April, then June, then the end of June, then July, then beginning of August, and then they're finishing the same day that we're finishing, which is like the 30th of August.
And you're trying to open up on the 5th of
Fire
September.
brigade have got to come down. Oh, it was a nightmare. So I had to cancel everything. There's no training. Couldn't get into the space. We're standing in Margaret talking to the guys about the food and stuff, but that doesn't help them in the space. We still haven't got the occupational certificate. I've had to cancel all of these people who are like, my corporate friends, Qantas, Fortis, IWC, Combank Private, all the people that I were doing these events for, and they were all doing the pre-opening, and the selling point for them was that you're going to get to see Songbird first. So none of that's happening. We can't get in. Bobby's having him set the furniture up. We started to set the furniture up at Songbird. We finally get the occupational certificate after cancelling the lunch bookings, 4:30 in the afternoon. We don't have the staircase at all, so that's all hoarded off. We've got to take people up through the elevators. The dumbwaiters are running at 50% of their capacity. So, it was the worst 2 weeks in. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks. Then we opened, and it was the most revolting opening I've ever done because of we weren't ready. I should have just cancelled everybody. But, what are you going to ring up and say to someone 2 days out? I know you got a table for 20 for Father's Day, but I'm sure you'll be able to go somewhere else.
But did you ring them and say, listen, we're not ready, but we're going to open up anyway?
No, you can't do that. So anyway, we did that. We finally got the staircase open 2 weeks later. So it was the worst 2 weeks. Called the dumbwaiter people in and just said, guys, this is just not fit for purpose. I don't know what you've done, blah, blah, blah. They go, oh, they can go twice as fast. And I'm like, well, so if I bought a Ferrari, you're going to say they're going to put the 4-cylinder engine in before I get the 12, just in case I can't handle the speed. Is that what you're saying? Oh, we didn't think to. I'm just like, oh my God. Anyway, we're serving 200 people, so we get the staircase back. Everyone's starting to work within the space. Food's coming out really nicely. Week 3, 4, we're into week 8 or 7 now. We've just gone 7 nights. And I had dinner there last night with a great friend of mine, Paul Harris, actually, who's a really great mate of David Coe, who was another awesome friend of mine who sadly passed away. One of the greatest humans ever lived.
Unbelievable. Knew how to live his life too.
Oh, mate. And he lived 2 lifetimes in one. That's the only reason you can't be sad that he died
passed
at
away
58.
doing what he loved.
Yeah, he
Skiing.
did. He did. So the restaurant is flying now. It's beautiful. The food's great.
Can you tell us a little bit about Songbird? What's the philosophy
Songbird and
behind
Bobby's
it?
is like a 4-level, and how it happened very organically. And if I knew what it was going to cost me now, I would never have done it. You know, Sam and I would have just gone on more holidays. I've put so much money into that place. But anyway, we love it. It's beautiful. Might get a return on investment one day. But I really wanted the bar, which used to be the old Pelicanos, and you know, the guy said, one of the partners just didn't want. He wanted to go somewhere else. And
Ched's old. That's Ched's old.
Yeah.
Bar.
And then Matthew Barakat and Dove are talking to me. They go, "Oh, but we'd love to do a restaurant on level 1 and ground." It's a very odd shape. Anyway, the long and short.
We're talking in Double Bay.
The Double Bay,
Bay Street, Double Bay, opposite the Oak Hotel.
The old Neville Guzman building. So the long and the short of it was, I basically said, yeah, we'll do it. Chinese restaurant. So as we were designing and doing everything, it was really clear that a lot of shared spaces and were very tight, had to be very well managed. If someone else had the bar, it would be almost impossible. Even just the simple things like garbages and bottles and cardboard, and we'd be fighting forever. So they came to the realization that we should have that the third level. And as we're designing it and we're walking up the staircase, I just sort of said, guys, are you going to cap this staircase off? It's the one heritage piece in the whole building which has kind of stayed, and people aren't going to be able to come up or down. You're going to soundproof it so the office is okay, and you've cut the heritage core of this thing in half. I said, it just doesn't make sense. And they walked up and down and went, you're right. You know, so then I ended up with enough infrastructure and a 240-seat restaurant. And if I'd had any idea how much it was going to cost, I would have run for the hills. But I kind of based it on the square meterage of Margaret, and that was done just as we were, you know, coming out of the first lockdown, and builders were looking for work.
Cost much lower.
Oh, mate, the costs were like extraordinary. So the whole project, design, build, pre-operatings, it's a $13 million 4-floor project. Wow. Oh, it's insane. No one would do it except for me. I'm an idiot. But I like to do things really well, and it is beautiful.
It's a beautiful space.
It's an amazing space, and you know, it's an amazing kitchen. It's one of the world's great kitchens.
What's an amazing kitchen mean?
Oh, it's all induction, electric, and you know, we created this beautiful induction suite and beautiful.
What does that mean,
induction all electric, cooking via. So induction actually works with creating, a generator creates friction within the pan. The metal vibrates and creates heat, and that's how it cooks. And it only cooks when you put the pan on the induction, either hob or the wok. And it's all combis that it's steam and roast, and we did this beautiful curved radius, and then every other bench has got these incredible curved radiuses, which cost a shitload of money when you're turning stainless steel like that. But they look beautiful. And all the floors are beautiful, and the heritage staircase is fantastic. And Bobby's looks amazing downstairs, one of the great cocktail bars in Sydney.
And the menu? We're talking about
menu
Chinese.
It's sort of Cantonese with a little bit of Szechuan and Hunan through it, but it's mainly Cantonese. The roast duck is phenomenal there because it's the best duck. So
what does that mean, the best duck?
Well, it's the Wallamai ducks that are just incredible. You know, they're Peking style, but you know, they're really truly free ranged. The guy, kills about 800 a week. Peppies probably kill about 150,000 a week. So the difference between kind of hand tooling a beautiful bird, breasts are much thicker, the flavor's better, the skin. We put it through a week's process of dry aging. So we've got a cool room that holds 350 ducks. And then we roast in a couple of different fashions to get it really crisp skin and beautiful tender flesh. So that's amazing. Dumplings are incredible. Ginger shallot, coral trout. We bring that all down from Bowen, from Bruce Collis. Ben Collison, and it's just without peer. Steamed ginger and shallot. Incredible Sun Farms, Sunderland chicken. You know, they're just incredible heritage bird, and we do those white cut, and we do them master stock and fried crisp, and you know, it's just eating great ingredients. It's exactly like what Margaret is, but with Chinese seasoning.
So, like, how important is to you and to your, maybe to you first, and then maybe to your guests, and maybe to your staff as well as a third, but the beautiful space. Like, why? I mean, apart from you could, in this crappy little spot here, you could cook me the same food, and I could have the same taste sensation.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to you? Because I remember the old Rockpool, the Rockpool in Sydney. Unbelievable space. It still is a beautiful space.
Oh, it's one of the great art deco chambers in the world. You know, there's no doubt. People talk about 11 Madison in New York, and I know Daniel, he's a great friend, and it's a beautiful space, but it's nothing like that.
Rockpool building is just wonderful. So how, and you've always, before that, when you were down at the Rocks,
Rockpool was
still a great space.
Design space.
And, you know, the casino, a bit different, but Rosetta was a great space.
Yeah.
So why is Neil Perry associated with such great spaces? What's that got to do with? I mean, cooking and food. Yeah, no, where's your dad? I get it. Where's the spaces come from?
The aesthetic's really important to me. It always has been. So for me, it's about creating that great memories, about creating a great environment to create great service, great food, and so that, you know, a great memory and experience is a package. You know, it's not I ate some beautiful food, or, you know, I drank great wine, or I had fantastic service. It's the whole emotion that you have from the whole experience. So for us, it's really important to create beautiful spaces for our customers. And secondly, it's important we spend a lot of time designing spaces that are functional for the staff.
Right.
Because people need to work in an environment that they can actually do their job really well in. And a lot of people, because I cook for a living and the restaurants have always, the kitchen's designed first and then we do everything else after that, I always make sure there's enough storage space and functional space and kitchen space. And you know, you say to people, oh, I've got 1,000 square meters or I've got 600 square meters. And I said, well, you've got to put 40% of that aside for all the infrastructure stuff and then 60% for the customers. And they go, oh, no, you can't do that. So that they start eating away at all those things that make stuff really important from a staff perspective. I mean, there's a really large restaurant group that just went broke recently. I won't name, but they're from Martin Place, and they built a massive, big, mega restaurant with a small kitchen, tiny pass, no prep space, and so they're expecting all this stuff to happen. And what happens is it just can't happen in the right time, with the right level of quality and the number of people that you're doing. So you end up with a whole lot of disasters, you know.
So I might just change tack a little bit here because I mentioned to you earlier before we started, I thought I saw one of your daughters in the city, but maybe not. But let's talk about your family for a second.
Yeah.
Who's working in the business, and your wife also working in the business?
Yeah,
so you mentioned earlier that she's part of Margaret, and I think Songbird as well.
Well, I've left most of the family at Margaret, and now I'm starting to go back. They'll start to kind of come across both. So it was important to me when we opened Songbird that everyone realised that we just haven't abandoned Margaret. You know, we need to have two fabulous restaurants, and winning like Restaurant of the Year last year in the Good Food Guide and being named third best steakhouse in the world, and this year I was named the 50 best restaurants, the Icon Award.
As in Margaret?
No, but they were all Margaret, but I was sort of named personally as an icon, which you know, Thomas Keller and Alice Waters and Heston Blumenthal. I mean, all these guys have been icons and girls have been icons over the years, and so to be the first Australian and to get world recognition like that was fantastic. But it's kept the momentum at Margaret going, and I think the other thing is that it's genuinely a family restaurant. Like, people see me having a coffee and clearing tables at the bakery and chatting to people at the bakery, and then I'm in at Margaret, and I still, like this week, I'm doing 3 full shifts as cooking and calling service at Margaret, and another couple of half ones. I'll be over at Songbird a couple of shifts. But you know, Sam, my wife, runs the pass on the waiter's side at Margaret. She does like Thursday night, double Friday, double Saturday, Sunday lunch. Macy's doing uni, and
Macy's one of your children?
Yeah, Macy's one of my girls, and she does, like last week she did Thursday night and then double Saturday, double Sunday, goes to the gym every morning, juggles a boyfriend and uni. I don't know how she does it, but you know, she's got my kind of drive. She's in it for the long haul.
I think you do know how she does it.
Yeah. Indy's, you know, just finishing HSC year, and she does polishing out the back, and she'll come forward. Macy hosts. And Josephine, my oldest daughter's just had my beautiful little granddaughter, Riley, who's like the apple of my eye at the moment. The other girls are getting jealous. And JP runs the host desk and reservation team. And
so Josephine's working there too?
Yeah. So she's on maternity leave
as well as
at the moment.
as well as being a mum.
So everyone works in the family, And we'll have to get little Riley at margaret.com, at margaret.com email address early on, so we can start communicating to her as a restaurant group.
Oh, I want to talk quickly about one last thing. It's because I could talk to you for hours because we don't have enough time, but because Australians don't like to listen to podcasts more than 45, 50 minutes, mate. But I could talk to you for hours. But I just want to talk about the phenomenon that you've created at Baker Blue.
Yeah.
And like, it's a business phenomenon. I mean, it's actually in terms of food, it's quite phenomenal too. But it doesn't get the same recognition as Margaret and everything else you do and have done.
Yeah.
But from a business point of view, I mean, I love it. I look at it, it's so busy. You're baking bread, effectively. I mean, I'm not undermining it.
No,
it's beautiful bread.
No, it's great bread.
Great product, etc. But like, I can imagine the margins are great. And you're sitting in the middle of Double Bay. It's like it's not price sensitive because people around there just say, "Oh, I'm going to Baker Blue to get my food," and they don't think how. No one wouldn't even know the prices. They wouldn't have a clue. I'm one of them. I mean, I just say, "Oh, I want that,"
Yeah.
and I just look at whatever it is. And I put my card on there and I walk out.
Tap and go, isn't it good?
It's so good for you. It's not as good as cash though, mate.
No.
We won't talk about that. But Baker Blue, just quickly cover off where that idea come from.
Yeah, sure.
And what is it?
Well, Baker Blue is Mike Russell and Mia Russell. So they started it. Mike worked for me at the original Rockpool Bar and Grill in Sydney. The Rockpool Bar and Grill in Sydney. He was the original second pastry chef. Catherine was the chef. He worked with me for 9 months. Went through to the first Christmas from March, and then he left because he wanted to go and bake. And I really liked him, and it was such a shame. He went and worked for Iggy for a while. Then he went down to Melbourne. He started his own bakery, and through doing some fundraisers with Ben Shuri, I kept running into him, and we just sort of kindled the relationship back. And I just said to him, "Look, as soon as you get your bigger bakery, we want you to do Rockpool Bar and Grill in Melbourne, and Rosetta in Melbourne with the bread because it's definitely the best bread." And during COVID, I started a charity called Hope Delivery. We did 800,000 meals, which was fantastic. We worked through Oz Harvest as well as in Melbourne. We gave out meals Riverside. So that was a really fantastic thing. And the guys from Mirvac were talking to me about potentially giving me a space down in South Everleigh. And I wanted to do a bakery where if you bought a loaf of bread went to a family. And that we put a cafe in and made it a social enterprise. So we were teaching refugees and teaching young kids and young First Nations kids how to be a barista, how to serve a table. So it would be a community cafe. So I was talking to Mike. So if I wanted to set up a bakery, so he taught me through it all. And he basically, fundamentally gave me the blueprint of this is how much money we would need. This is what you'd have to do, So anyway, Dove and Matthew went, "Look, we've got this great space, 2 Guilfoyle next to Margaret. We want to do a restaurant. What do you think we should do?" And I kind of looked at the space, and unlike Margaret, it's got a nice frontage, but it's essentially very long and narrow walls. And I went, what about doing something that's much more community focused that everybody can get involved with? Because, coffee and bread and sandwiches is a much more sort of everyday experience to what, and it also adds, for the people who work in the area and the people who shop in the area, it adds a layer that the community didn't have anything like that at all. So I rang Mike and I said, "Mate, how would you like to be my partner in Double Bay?" And, he came up, we sat down, they saw the space. I had dinner with them at Rockpool Bar and Grill. And I essentially put to them a partnership with Sam and myself and Mia and he, and they jumped at it. Rest is history. We've done it. It's massively busy. It probably takes more money than any other bakery in Sydney. 50% of it's food service. So we make sandwiches and pizza, and we take the best bread. It's just baked there over near where the lounge is. It comes here and we slice it. We put the same level of ingredients that we put in
terms of quality.
In terms of quality, like we have our butcher who gets the David Blackmore product here. He pumps the silver sides for us. The butcher that is there used to work at Rockpool for 7 years. Pete does it to our recipe, makes the hams to our recipe. Everything comes in. Pino does our salamis and mortadella, which I think are the best around. We use really high quality chicken. We use really high quality fruit and veg. We take the alpine salmon out of Mount Cook, out of New Zealand. We cure it we don't smoke. We cure it to make a pastrami for our bagels, because I don't even want to talk about what Tasmanian salmon is and the crap that we talk about smoked salmon here in Australia. So all of that stuff, make the pickles. We do all this sort of stuff. So.
And by the way, there's a lot of pastries as well.
And great pastries, and it makes the best sandwiches, because you take the best ingredients, the best bread, copper tree butter, which is the best, the best salted butter going. My name's on it, so of course it is. I help create it. And you end up with the best sandwiches. We have people like they just kill for those sandwiches.
Yeah,
it's extraordinary.
And I often go there, and I think the stuff's wonderful. And it's funny, every time we go there to see you, you're always sort of around the area, always watching. You must work an enormous amount of hours.
Yeah, I do, but I don't think about it as work.
No, because you love it.
That cliche about find something you love and you never work a day in your life. I mean, the whole thing is, the day that I wake up and don't want to get up and go down and have a coffee at Baker Blue and chat, the first thing I do is I look at the bread, look at the pastries. I go in and see George, who runs my food service, who's worked for me. He was with me at Barrenjoey House, not Barrenjoey, Blue Water Grill with me at Rockpool.
Wow.
So he runs that. I chat to him about some of the things, because he started cutting the bread already and the bagels. I go straight in. I see Will, the head baker, or Nick, the number 2, if it's his day, and I just say, yeah, great work, guys. The bread looks fantastic. Or, the rye's a bit flat. What happened? And we work through it. Gio, our pastry chef, we talk through that. So that, that's my first sort of 30 minutes down in the bakery, just chatting to the guys about, well done, looks great, blah, blah. Usually, 99% of the time it's well done. Occasionally it's like, rye's a bit flat today. What happened? And they'll talk me through, because it's a living organism, right? So, all of a sudden it's wet and rainy, or it's humid and hot and the weather's jumping around, or a new batch of flour comes in that's slightly more absorbent or less absorbent. I've learned a lot. I've always appreciated flour as a chef and working with the guys in pastry. Baking is a whole new aspect of that. So that's where my day starts, and then I'm at Margaret and I'm over at Songbird talking to the chefs. And generally for me, I would be going straight to the boys who are dry filleting the fish, and I'm talking through what's coming in, what the fish is looking like. They're filleting it, it's under rigor. It's beautiful. We're talking about how much more fish I think we'll need this week. Looking at the meat that's coming in, my aging room is out at near Brookvale in the Northern Beaches. It's just completely full of all the beef that we use, and our butcher cuts it and sends it in each day. So having control of that, and then talking to the chefs about what the menu is going to be. And then often I'll be doing briefing if I'm on, like Saturday and Sunday and Thursday and Friday night. Last week I worked in the kitchen at Margaret, so I'll run the food side of the briefing. Every night we talk to all the staff, and every morning we talk to all the front of house staff about what's an addition to the menu, where something's from, what the oyster change is, particular fish, whatever it might be. Like at the moment, we're running through a lot of things where winter stuff's going out and fruits are coming in and stuff. So those conversations are really important. I do the same thing at Songbird, and that's then the start of my day. Then I'm in the kitchen or talking to customers, and in the afternoon I'll be doing some stuff with the chefs, or I'll be doing. At the moment, I'm working on a whole lot of recipes for Cobram olive oil, because we work really closely with them. Plus, that's when I sit down with my CEO and CFO and just run through stuff from the previous day, the previous week, set up for our Wednesday meetings or whatever it might be. So that kind of happens. And then the weekend starts and it's just full on. It's just restaurants.
And where do you, and the energy, where's it come from? Well, you feel more energized now than you've ever done, I'd say.
I feel more in control of my life than I ever had, because I really don't want to do anything else except for grow the bakeries. So we'll have more shops in Sydney, and I want to do
more Baker Blues.
Yeah, more Baker Blues. I don't want any more restaurants. I just want Margaret and Songbird and Bobby's and next door to run at the peak of their powers. Making people like I go to next door once every couple of weeks and have the burger there, because the cheeseburger there is just absolutely fantastic. I could have one every day, but then I wouldn't look like I do. So I really love that, and for me, I'm financially stable. I don't have any partners apart from Baker Blue and Natalie and and Lyndon in Bobby's. There are two little partnerships, but they're kind of more like giving those guys opportunities within Sydney. I feel like I made enough money to help younger, but they're all in their 40s, and I'd really like to help them grow and they have the aspirations that I've had and stabilize their life the way I've been able to stabilize mine. And we own our own businesses, and the bank is very happy with me, and the kids are beautiful, and we've got a gorgeous granddaughter, and I just don't even know what more I could have in life that would, make me happier.
It's amazing. I can see it in your eyes. And I can see it in everything you do. You seem to be like at a really great place, in peace of mind.
Yeah,
but still active, plenty of energy.
I sort of think, my life's been like, I think I break it into sort of sections of my life that are like, there was one part that was my life was growing to be able to create Rockpool, which was one of the great restaurants in the world. And that then became Rockpool Bar and Grill. And then I sold that business, and I never thought I would do that. If anyone had said to me in the early 2000s or 90s, would you ever sell this? I would have said, I will die with this restaurant brand. It's me, it's part of my DNA. And then I was lucky enough to be able to sell it. And then I was lucky enough to be able, so I realized all that hard work that I put in, I realized a reward from that, because, it's like you often be putting in tremendous amounts of hours and just reinvesting in your business and reinvesting in your business. And I finally got to the stage where I was able to, get a great reward for all the energy I'd put in and for all the ideas that I'd had. And at that stage, I really didn't think that I'd walk away from it completely. But, COVID started, and there were a few other things, and they wanted to take the business in this direction, and I wanted to go in that direction. And the guys from Quadrant, Chris and JP at the time, were really fantastic. They said, look, you can go and open this little restaurant. They didn't have to do that because I had constraints over me and stuff. And, meeting Charles and all those guys was really important, and, found a great landlord. I felt took a risk because the rents were kind of like city rents, but in the suburbs. But COVID had changed the way Double Bay was. Well, not even Double Bay. All suburbs were working. People were feeling comfortable in their community and spending much more time there than in the city. And even if they went to the city, they were coming back to have lunch or have dinner or whatever it might be. And then I've really now, it's named after my mother, so it's so personal, so it won't, there'll be no selling this one. And we've kind of named it the Margaret family because we don't really see it as being corporate or a group. It's, it's a family that owns these businesses that they live in and thrive in, and our customers are so important to us. Our staff are even more important to us, and we're able to make decisions every day, not based on what the bottom line is. I wouldn't say we don't care about that, because we do, because we've got to run a business, we've got to reward the staff and so forth. But that's not our main motivation. Our motivation is, how good are we? How much joy are we bringing? How much enjoyment do the staff have working for us? What privileges we can give them, and what leg up we can give them in their career or life or whatever. And that really is how we think now, or how I think particularly. And so for me, that gives me so much joy and happiness. And now that I'm out of that little dark 4-week period at Songbird that almost killed me, I'm really happy, and things are going really, really well.
Well, Neil Perry, thanks for your relentlessness. Thanks for continually giving us education about what's great food, what's a great space, what's a great experience. But probably right now, thanks for what you do to the communities within which you operate. That's not just your staff and your family and your family staff, but also the people you serve.
Thank you.
And it's really important. You are. I actually think, I've always been a Neil Perry fan, but it's easier to say that because Neil Perry's sort of, iconic and famous. But
I've just been around for a long time.
Yeah, but that's part of the game. And thanks for being such a great survivor in such a tough industry.
Thank you.
Full of critics, and you've come out shining, mate. Well done.
Thank you. Thanks, mate. Good to be here.